Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this WCEF 2025 acceleration session called Advancing a Just Transition to Circular Procurement. My name is Kara Sweeney, and I'm the Program Director at UNIS Environment Hub, and I'm honored to be your moderator today. We're virtually coming to you as part of the World Circular Economy Forum in this year, which this year brings together circular economy experts and pioneers from around the world, from all the way Sao Paulo to here in Europe. So to share our visions and solutions. So very excited to welcome you all here today. Before we go into the topic of today's session, which is advancing a just transition through circular procurement, I just briefly want you to introduce you to UNIS Environment Hub. UNIS Environment Hub is a global social business network creating solutions for the environment crisis, co-founded and led by Nobel Peace Prize laureate Professor Mohammed Yunus. Our mission really is to design and implement social business to solutions to environmental and social challenges. And in practical terms, this really means that we support and promote social businesses that address ecological challenges in financially sustainable ways, while also creating a positive social impact. And our work really spans a range of focus areas, including circular economy, waste management, recycling, carbon neutrality, biodiversity, even sustainable agriculture, to clean energy and mobility, reflecting a very, very broad scope of environmental issues that we need to tackle in the world today. And at the heart of UNIS Environment Hub's philosophy is Professor Yunus's vision of a world of three zeros, so a world with zero poverty, a world with zero unemployment, and a world of zero net carbon emissions. And this really is the vision that guides everything in all the programs that we do. We believe that environmental sustainability must go hand in hand with social equity and also economic inclusion. And so, in other words, we want to solve the climate crisis in a way that it creates jobs, empowers vulnerable communities, and also eliminates poverty. And we really strive to turn this vision into reality by nurturing social businesses that deliver environmental solutions and social benefits. And our session today is really very much aligned with that vision of advancing a just transition, ensuring that we shift to a circular, sustainable economy, and we do so in a way that leaves truly no one behind. Before we dive into the topic very, very deeply, let me give you a quick overview of our session together and the next 90 minutes that we'll spend. I'll start by framing our session and its objectives. So that's what I'm doing right now. And after I introduce the agenda, I'll also still give you a brief introduction into why circular procurement is needed for a just transition. And then I'll hand over to my colleague, Julia Geschwenda, who is our Circularize Accelerator lead at UNIS Environment Hub, and she will present key insights from our recent flagship report on circular economy and give kind of a short impulse report presentation that will set the stage for our discussion. Then we'll move on to a moderated panel discussion with our four amazing panelists who I'm so honored to welcome here today. Daniel Büchle, who is the CEO of AFB, Social and Green IT, in Germany, representing a social business and inclusive employment side of circular economy. Then also Sulipta Das, who's the climate practice lead at Catalyst Management Services in India, bringing kind of a systems and global south perspective on climate and social innovation. And then we'll also welcome Elena Martinez, who's the co-founder and CTO of SOS Biotech in the Dominican Republic and is an innovator in turning waste into sustainable products, about which she'll tell you more later on. And then we also are welcoming Talke Schafranek, who's the Director of Circular Economy at BASF, based in Germany, and will provide us some large corporate viewpoints on what it takes to integrate circularity into business. So please welcome these amazing speakers on board. I'll share more information about them when we come to the panel discussion part. But again, please welcome me and welcome them, and really looking forward to the session together. During this session, we'll then deep dive into how circular procurement can drive a just transition. Throughout the session entirely, we invite you all, our live global audience, to please engage real time with us by asking questions in the chat. Maybe drop in the beginning right now where you're from. I'm very curious to see where you're joining us from and why you're joining this session. We'd love to see why you're here and what you're looking to get out of our session today. And we're also looking forward to any questions you have. So please continue to drop them in the chat while we speak. Your insights and questions are very much welcome, so please do participate. Finally, we'll wrap up everything up with some closing reflections in the end, and I'll also summarize some key takeaways and share how you can take action and get involved in circular procurement. And each of our panelists will also share a brief closing statement on what they think is needed to really make a just transition happen. So with that, without further ado, let's get into why circular procurement is needed for just transition. So as the circular economy gains momentum globally, we're realizing that it's about more than just recycling or waste. It's about people, prosperity, and also our planet. And when we talk about a just transition, what we really mean by this is ensuring the shift to a green circular economy is fair and inclusive, and it really leaves no one behind. It's about aligning climate action with social justice and creating new opportunities and new livelihoods as we reduce emissions and waste. And circular procurement in particular is emerging as a really powerful lever in doing this. By changing what and also how we procure, so how you and I buy, but also companies and governments buy, we can scale up climate action while creating economic, social, and also environmental benefits. In other words, circular impact procurement can really turn our purchasing power into a force of good by cutting carbon, cutting waste, and supporting communities and good jobs at the same time. And you may think, why is this urgent now? Well, we're halfway to 2030. The clock is ticking on climate goals, and inequalities have been laid bare globally. Business as usual won't necessarily get us there, but the good news is we have innovative solutions. We've got social business and entrepreneurs already proving that circularity can drive inclusive growth, like the amazing representatives we have on our panel today. For example, imagine tech companies like AFB refurbishing old IT equipment through this social business approach that employs people with disabilities. And these are some real possibilities, and they're already happening, but they need to become the norm, not the exception. To just briefly also showcase the scope we're talking about, a recent study by the International Labour Organization found that transitioning to a circular economy could create about 5 million new jobs globally, but seizing that opportunity really requires a systemic shift in how we operate. And that's where procurement comes in. It's a high leverage tool. If big buyers from corporations to governments start prioritizing circular and social value in their supply chain, it can open markets for sustainable innovation and also accelerate a just transition at scale. So that's really why we're here, and that's what we want to talk about today. And why aren't all these organizations doing this circular impact focused procurement yet? You may ask yourself. Well, there are challenges to this as well. Lack of awareness, perceived risks, rigid procurement criteria, or the simple fact that doing things in a new way requires a mindset shift. And today, together with our panel speakers, we'll dive into all the challenges, the opportunities, and solutions to this. And we'll explore in detail how circular procurement, so the sourcing of circular goods and services from social businesses, can become a practical and scalable strategy to advance a just transition. We'll hear some real life and real world examples of how this is working, discuss the systemic changes that are needed, and hopefully also inspire you to take action on what you can do to transition and move forward from this today. So before we go into this into depth, it's important to understand that today's discussion also builds on the work that we do at UNIS Environment Hub. Earlier this month, in collaboration with the Bertelsmann Foundation in Germany, we released a flagship report called A Systemic Circular Economy Transition in Germany, which examines how circular social businesses can drive this type of systemic change that I've been talking about. And while this study focuses on German circular social businesses, many of the insights from that study are highly relevant globally. And I can't think of anyone better suited to give us a snapshot of this study than my colleague Julia Geschwender. She leads the Circularized Economy at UNIS Environment Hub, which is our program to scale circular social businesses, and will now provide you with an insight to the report, the key findings, and what that means for transitioning in a just and equitable way. With that, Julia, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Kara, for the introduction. Yeah, very excited to be here. Also very excited to see everyone sitting here on the panel, specifically also having circular social businesses here. It's always like the biggest pleasure to then dive into practice and see what you are doing through your everyday work. And yes, as already mentioned by Chiara, we have just published a report. You can see it here. It's called A Systemic Circular Economy Transition in Germany. And together with the Bertelsmann Foundation, which are experts in the field of circular economy policy as well in Germany, and bringing our expertise in terms of working with social businesses and social business models, we try to bring those two fields together and analyze the market, what is actually out there, and how are these circular social businesses defined, and how do they really contribute to this just transition we are talking about. So how did we get there? We looked at what's currently out there. We see a lot of circular businesses. There's a lot of literature also out there on how these circular businesses, so really businesses that drive new models in the circular economy field, create environmental impact. There's a lot of potential, and how they really use this also for economic growth. But when looking at this and kind of seeing those two bubbles, circular economy on the one hand, business on the other hand, we were wondering if there is not something missing. So maybe the social dimension to create holistic impact. And we therefore really started to dive into the topic, how is the social impact dimension actually included in the current circular economy landscape? Who is creating the social impact in the circular economy, if it is there? And what are really general principles that can help us moving towards a just transition through circular economy? And this is exactly what we did. We tried to bring the people component into the whole equation. So we talk about environment, the social component, as well as the economic and business component on the other hand. And we call these businesses that are active there and really create this environmental and social impact at the same time, circular social businesses. And just to give you an idea of how we did our research, so we really wanted to look at the practical side of things and how it's being done in Germany at the moment. So we looked at a lot of different databases of circular businesses and circular startups actually in Germany, and overall created a list of 274 businesses that are creating this environmental impact and are clearly active in the circular economy. And then we looked at all of them in detail and actually tried to find out if they're always aligned with social impact components or not. And in the end, so around half of them were definitely creating environmental impact, but we could not really see that they take the people component, so the social component, into consideration. So what we did is we thought about, oh, what are different ways actually to create social impact? You can do that in different ways, either primary, so directly driving it through your business model and your revenue generating activities, really along your value chain, so kind of having a responsible value chain, or through secondary activities, so non-commercial activities that are added on top of what you're doing through your revenue generating activities. And we found out that 37% of those businesses that we looked at actually had social components at the core of what they're doing, so primary or value chain. So really making this part of their mission, being social businesses and implementing this through circular economy, just for you to get an idea what really our basis was. And I mean, for us, it was super interesting to see that these businesses are actually out there, that it's actually quite a big share. And yeah, we were looking at what are their characteristics and what are the takeaways that we can actually draw from that can also enable our whole economy to shift. And I'll just share a few of the outcomes with you. So looking at the R strategies for circular economy, I guess most of you, as you're interested and active in the circular economy field, are very familiar with those. So this is really a set of approaches that is being used to move towards a more circular future. And strategies that are applied by different businesses. And as Chiara already mentioned, traditionally, circular economy is very often seen as recycling or recovering materials. And you can also see this at the very bottom here of these 11 strategies. So yeah, that's really, it means closing the loop. It means, it's often a lot of technology involved to really bring post-consumer waste back into the economic cycle. But circular economy is actually way more than that. If we move a bit further up on those R strategies, we can see that there are a lot of different strategies, for instance, reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacture, that have a way higher impact, and they help to slow the loop. So these means they often involve greater innovation in product and business models, and they really use products, components, and materials way longer than they would be in traditional cycles. And we can go even one stage further up, which is kind of narrowing the loop. So this means before products even come out there are ways to think of how to redesign them, how to refuse materials overall, how to rethink consumption patterns. And these are really the ones that have the highest level of circularity, and also the ones with a high potential to really provide systemic solutions and with a lot of innovation directly already in the beginning stage of the product design. And so I mean, this was on the one hand the theory of how social impact can be created, on the other hand, how circular economy strategies look like. And of course, we try to put them together now. So on the left side, you can see we looked at traditional circular startups that are creating environmental but no social impact. On the right side, you can really see those circular social businesses that create holistic impact. And what we could really see is that a majority of those businesses that are creating social impact actually are in narrow the loop. So they really try to tackle the problems from the beginning. They are not only taking care of waste, but really engage in the fact that fewer components are being used, that fewer materials are being used, that products are designed in a different way, and that they are also rethinking of how products are being used. And how consumption patterns look like. And with this understanding of how they act within the circular economy, we try to also look into more detail on what are common practices of those businesses in Germany and what do they actually apply in terms of creating social impact. And yeah, here I would just like to give some examples. We saw that a lot of them actually focus on restoring. So they really try to create net positive impact from the beginning. So in terms of creating social impact, a lot of them focus, for instance, on strengthening local economies by supporting entire local value chains, sourcing from local producers, for instance, and creating local green and quality jobs that also support local communities. They also often, if it's about consumer products, include citizen engagement and co-creation processes really from the beginning, ensure social cohesion, or also even among businesses and people from the value chain, enable education and training and peer learning, and really try to make a collaborative effort out of business. Then, I mean, a lot of them, or I think actually the majority of these circular social businesses also integrate components of rethinking. So really rethinking consumption patterns. There are a lot of activities in terms of promoting sustainable lifestyles and really ingraining behavioral change elements into the product or service delivery. This can, for instance, it's not only educating on the side, but for instance, gamification efforts that really make people change their behaviors. Or we can also see that in terms of changing behaviors of companies, right? So if the business model really is a B2B business model and changes how companies procure, for instance, that would also fall under this. And also we could see a lot in terms of social cohesion. So in this rethinking, a lot of cooperative models, co-creation of solutions were enabled, or also social inclusion, meaning accessibility and affordability for different parts of the society, creating quality jobs that ensure safety, health, and gender equality, eventually also sourcing from disadvantaged group and employing vulnerable and marginalized groups. So they really do this as part of their business model. And then what we also did in the report was examining how we can derive principles out of that. We have countless examples of what individual actions are, but we really try to identify patterns and see to really enable this just transition and a systemic change in circular economy. What are really the main principles that are being applied? And these are the 5 that we came up with. So we can really see that most of those circular social businesses, they are focusing on tackling root causes. So they don't only just cure symptoms, but they really redesign products and business models. They are innovative in that field. They focus on higher circular economy strategies and really contribute even to nature regeneration. The second thing is that they really focus on behavioral change. So they integrate, for instance, these rethink strategies that I mentioned before in their primary business activities, and they often support this also with education and advocacy to really make sure it lands with people and they have a long-lasting change. And that often encourages also the change of consumption patterns, really to ensure this is long-lasting. Another thing is that circular social businesses, to create this systemic change, allow accessibility to all parts of the society. This also involves different models, often, for instance, access to products instead of ownership, like sharing models, for instance, or really the design of inclusive products where inclusivity is thought about from the beginning. The 4th principle is a collaborative approach. Examples for that are civic participation and social cohesion, for instance, through cooperative models, and also really building business activities on ecosystem collaboration. So not solely on competition, but really thinking of how can cross-industry collaboration work, and also within the ecosystem that they operate for optimal results. And last but not least, transparency is key. So really ensuring transparency for themselves as well as for the stakeholders along the whole value chain regarding their business operations as well as their impact. So last but not least, of course, we came up with some recommendations and we looked at the different ecosystem players. So first of all, we really saw that this collaboration aspect, so really that the whole ecosystem needs to work together, is key. There cannot be a circular social business on their own that's changing the world. It needs to be supported by policy, it needs to be supported by investments, and also by other businesses or potential procurers, coming back to the topic of today, for their products to have a market. And yeah, for businesses, I mean, I presented you kind of these 5 principles that can be integrated by them to really make sure that systemic impact is being enabled through what they do. For funders and investors, as well as also procurers, it would be extremely important that social impact is explicitly included in decision-making and investment criteria, that also locally relevant and replicable solutions, which often have a very high degree of impact, are supported. And also, of course, including all of this in policy making, in national policies, as well as also in other policies that influence things like public procuring, for instance, or general public processes. And yeah, so happy to have shared these insights. And I think you have 2 fantastic circular social businesses on the panel as well that are applying a lot of these principles already with AFB and also with SOS Biotech. And yeah, I wish you a great discussion, and then also probably some tangible examples in your discussion of how this social impact is being created.
Thank you so much, Julia. Really appreciate you sharing all of these insights. If you're interested in reading the full report, feel free to scan this link. We'll also share the link in the chat so you can directly access it and you can read the full report. Yes, Talke, please feel free to jump in.
No, I just wanted to clap and say thanks a lot. Actually, I also learned some new things. So really nice, Julia. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for the feedback.
That's amazing. No, thank you, Julia. Thank you very, very much for presenting and sharing those findings. I think it was truly super educative. And I think this report and presentation also really underlines why circular economy efforts with social businesses is so powerful. And also, well, we need to talk about why it's not happening at scale, because it could have such a big impact. And that's exactly what we would like to discuss now. And with that, I'd love to turn to our amazing panel and hear directly from our experts. For that, I'll introduce our panelists again and properly and invite them to say a few words about their work and also why circular procurement matters to them or what this means to them. And I'll start with you, Daniel, as the CEO of AFB Social and Green IT in Germany. Daniel has been with AFB, well, I think it's safe to say, Daniel, since its early days, right? And you took over as the as the CEO in 2024. Maybe to briefly summarize, AFB is Europe's largest IT social business, and it specializes in refurbishing, reusing used IT in mobile devices. And what I personally think is amazing about AFB is the way that it combines environmental sustainability with social inclusion in a very tangible way, because under Daniel's leadership, AFB mission is not only to give technology a second life, but also create jobs for people with disabilities in the process. And correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, but I think today AFB operates across 5 countries, right? And more of half of your employees employed have a disability, but you're providing them with jobs and opportunities and making a social impact by doing so, right? Anyways, I'm very honored to have you here with us today. And my question to you specifically is, with AFB's model, you're really turning e-waste into opportunity. Could you maybe tell us a bit more about AFB and also why circular procurement is important from your perspective as a social business leader in Germany?
Yes, Chiara, thank you so much. Perfect introduction. I think everything was said. No, just joking. I'm so happy to be here with you today and to talk with you about this so important topic. Our company is a social business company, but also a non-profit company, an inclusion company. AFB was founded more than 20 years ago in 2004. And our mission is to collect as many IT and mobile devices as possible from public authorities, but also from companies, to transport them to one of our branches, to make the data destruction, test them, make the grading, clean them, refurbish them, and with new software, repair them, and then give as many devices as possible a second life. And so why do we do this? Because yes, after hardware was used for 3, 4, or 5 years at companies, and doesn't matter if these are small or big companies, perhaps it's not good enough, not good anymore for the companies. But this is hardware which can be used for more than 10, almost perhaps 15 years with at NGOs, at private customers, and so. So our one big mission is to extend the life cycle of hardware, to reduce waste, to reduce CO2 emissions, water consumption, energy, everything which is needed to manufacture new IT devices. This is the one thing of our big mission as a non-profit company. The other is that we have at the moment nearly 700 employees in 5 countries: Germany, France, Switzerland, Slovakia, and Austria. And half of our employees are people with disabilities. And we act on the first labor market. And that's a very important thing, because people with disabilities, for them, it's not that easy to get a job compared to people without disabilities. Often they are more qualified, but they have less chances for education, for example. And often they are really experts in what they are doing. And so we are combining these 2 problems, e-waste and equity, people with disability. And so this is our big mission, to make a contribution to these 2 topics. Of course, we have profits. Of course, we have to grow. We have to make business, but we have no external stakeholders which say, okay, you have to maximize your profit or something like this. Everything we earn, every profit we make, we can invest in new jobs and in doing something good for the circular economy. And that's been our business for the last 20 years. And I'm here at AFB since the beginning, and because it's really great to make perhaps only a small contribution, but a contribution to a world that is more sustainable. Not only for me, I think on my kids when I do my job, and I think on how the world should be in 20 years, in 50 years, in 100 years. And so I'm very proud to work for such an organization.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that insight, Daniel. And you definitely can be proud. Cutting waste and empowering marginalized groups at the same time, that's definitely an accomplishment and something we need to see more of. I agree, especially for our future, but also the next generation's future. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing and putting that into perspective. Then I'd like to move on to you, Sulipta. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sulipta is the Climate Practice Lead at Catalyst Management Services based in India, and Sulipta brings over 15 years of experience in sustainability and development, working from business excellence, gosh, to social innovation and climate adaptation. You've done a huge amount. And at Catalyst Management Services, Sulipta leads the climate practice, meaning she works on large-scale change initiatives across the Global South. So Sulipta, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Given your background in climate and systems change, could you share why circular procurement matters for a just transition in the context you work in?
Yes, well, thank you very much. I feel very humbled in this purpose-driven panel talk and very happy to be here. And thank you for that introduction. Um, so I'm representing Catalyst Group, which is a 30 years old social enterprise, uh, really working at the nexus of multiple things. What began as a social impact study kind of evolved over 30 years and working across climate, health, livelihood, informal works, waste management, working with transgender, different abled communities, marginalized communities. So there's a whole journey. I think this would be very short to explain the journey. But what I can say that we have been advocating for not only circular practices, but also social impact. So this really means a social impact journey for us. And also where I come from, it kind of puts us in an unique position to represent a large scale of communities or small and large businesses uh, that has huge potentials, and it's still locked under our still linear economy and not in circular economy. So I think it matters to us because we represent a community which needs to be heard, who have the potential of unlocking immense amount of opportunity in job creation, delivering social impact, creating economic value, driving circular economy, and also strengthening a section which is, I would say that 90% of Indian businesses are smallholders, small and medium scale businesses. So it's really a very big mission that we are onto, not only to look into circular model, but also kind of looking at it, building a roadmap for a resilient and inclusive economy. So I think we have been working in so many spaces. So if I say about waste, so I think in the past few years we worked with plastics, removing 650 tons of plastic from the landfill and involving the local communities, the local rag pickers, and really helping them with this opportunity of jobs, upskilling, capacity building, on orchestrating them and taking them at the forefront. Secondly, I think we are also orchestrating a large network and collaboration based approach, which really helps us in bridging the gap between the top stakeholders and make it connect with the last mile communities. So yeah, it is very important to us, and it's kind of built into our ethos that not only to deliver social impact, but in the way generate economic returns for them, really value the Indian practices that we kind of evolve with, respect, giving them the acceptance in the society, changing the mindset, and at the same time helping in the capacity building, collaborating with networks at regional level, national level, global level, to bridge the various gaps of finance, policy, engagement, etc. So yeah, so I think we are on our pathway to bring change in somewhere, in this economic map. And working, I think over the last 15 years, I've also realized I've represented a lot of countries in the global south. I've seen there has been a lot of traction in social businesses, small organizations, nonprofits, startups, in circular sector, circular economy, in the logistics and supply chain. So it's very impressive to see the amount of work that has been gone into looking into the principles that you were mentioning in the previous slides. That really, I think, over the past 5 or 10 years, many stakeholders have come together to bring in a change at systemic level, thinking through various elements and the complexity of our supply chain. And yes, we are still building onto it. And yes, I'm happy to take it forward.
Thank you so much, Salipta. I think you've really highlighted some critical points about building ecosystems, removing barriers, and the potential of social business to drive a just transition and change. So thank you so much for sharing that, and also sharing such a hopeful note on that you have seen this transition happen more and more in recent years. I think that is very, very positive to hear. You spoke about local communities and tackling challenges, and with that, I would also like to welcome our third panelist on board, who also is doing so much. Elena Martinez. Thank you so much for joining us. Elena is the co-founder and CTO of SOS Biotech, which is the first blue tech company in the Dominican Republic. She's a scientist, entrepreneur, an oceanographer, if I'm saying that right. I probably messed up the word, but has 2 master's degree in applied blue biotechnology and is currently also pursuing her PhD in biotechnology and biomedicine. And Elena and her team at SOS Biotech are tackling one of the Caribbean's biggest environmental challenges, which is the invasion of sargassum seaweed, and are turning this into opportunity because they are transforming it into sustainable products like bioplastics, even cosmetics, and a variety of other products as well. And in doing so, they're not only cleaning up the ocean and the beaches, but they're also creating new value chains and jobs for coastal communities, and supporting them in their livelihoods. So Elena, we're delighted to have you and have you join today as a startup founder working on the front lines of the blue circular economy. What does circular procurement mean to you?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me and for the amazing introduction. It's a pleasure being here. So for me, well, Julie explained it perfectly. Circularity is a much more complex concept that most of us are used to hear, not let's say. And also it's an environment. We usually tend to think that a whole company will be circular, but no, like it's a huge component and then different sections and a whole value chains that need to be covered by many different organizations and understand as a broader context. So, for example, in our case, circularity comes from transforming what is seen as a waste, that is the sargassum seaweed that you mentioned, into an useful matrix that not only allow us to produce this environmental sanitation, but also help us to reduce reliance on synthetic products that are not good and that may be toxic both for the environment, but also for the public health. And that we are so used to have them in sectors such as agriculture, cosmetics, or materials, that we don't understand how truly problematic they are. So circularity for me means to understand that for nature waste does not exist. It's our main motto and what SOS Biotech under the SOS group was born to prove that what's nowadays called nature-based solution, but for me it's just to see what nature has been doing for thousands, hundreds, millions of years, and to follow that principles. And specifically also to see that circularity needs to be tailored to the specific regions we are working on. Different countries don't need the same type of solutions, and circularity is a different thing depending on the region and depending on the already existing materials, systems, legal frameworks that each country has. And I think that's one of the main problems of the successful implementation of circularity, is that we aim to create a general concept of circularity and a successful scene of circularity, and no, we need to tailor the solutions. And for example, as you mentioned, in the Caribbean, we are a coastal region. Circularity for us means a lot related with the sea, but also related to our local communities and the benefits that circularity means for those. And in circularity, we are also talking not only about the environment, we are talking regarding also this social part and the involvement on these chains and this huge environment of benefits that we can create. So I will say that's more or less how we see it and how we have based our business model. That's it's working already. It's no longer an idea. That's also another part that many people tend to think regarding solutions coming from the global south or solutions coming from startups or solutions that are based on circularity. No, that's they are dreams. No, this is an already business model working a profitable company, a company that doesn't make you choose between the environment, the people, and profitability.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Elena, and thank you again for being here. I agree. I think your work truly exemplifies innovation for a just transition, exactly what we're talking about today as well, turning environmental challenges into inclusive business models. And I think it's very exciting to see you see this as an opportunity. With that, last but not least, I would like to introduce Talke Schafranek, who leads the Global Circular Economy Program at BASF, one of the world's largest chemical companies. Talke is the Director of Circular Economy at BASF and headquartered in Germany, where she's driving the integration of circular principles across, well, a huge enterprise. And Talke, your background is quite diverse. You've worked in applied sustainability and business development in Europe, but also in Asia. And I think you hold both an MBA from Mannheim Business School and the Tongji University in Shanghai. And I think it's fair to say that you understand how to embed circularity thinking in both strategy and operations, and that in different cultural contexts and at large scale. So super honored to have you on board today. And we really thank you for being here. From a corporate perspective, why do you see circular procurement as a key to advancing a just transition?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chiara, for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here today. As BASF, I guess a lot of people here might have heard the company, but just to explain a little bit and why that is actually also a challenge from a circularity perspective. So basically, as BASF, the business model is that we use a lot of currently still fossils, right? And then with a relatively few number of products, we make a lot of different products. So in total, it's roughly 45,000 different products that we make, and you have probably touched one or the other today already, be it nylon in textiles, be it shampoo raw materials, be it detergents or coatings of a car or bicycle. So different products and chemicals are usually not the product that is sold to an end customer, but that is always B2B. And when now thinking of how can we actually transform such a company that is dependent a lot on fossil raw materials, because that's basically the big part of the raw materials that we use. The question is, how can we do that in a sustainable way? And we have basically set up a circular economy strategy a couple of years ago when I took over the topic, and we said, okay, let's have 3 different topics that we want to focus on, and you can see them also in my background. And number 1 would be really to look at that topic of exchanging circular feedstocks. So how can we move to more bio-based feedstocks, and how can we move to more recycled-based feedstocks to slowly move away from fossil-based? And we have already a number of projects in this area, but still the number is too slow to say, okay, we have achieved something, we can now stand still. So there is still a lot to be done. And that has to be done in a sustainable way, because it also doesn't make sense to say, okay, now we stop using fossils, we go all the way to bio-based, but then that infringes with, for example, the Amazonian forest or something like that. To say it bluntly, of course, that's not done, but it's very important to keep in mind that there are sustainability principles that need to be adhered to. So that's where I see a big link to sustainable sourcing, and that's where we also work very closely with our sourcing colleagues. The second area here is to then create circular products, or to create material cycles. So, for example, if you let's take textiles again, where we produce nylon as one and where, for example, where we work on projects to recycle now nylon-rich textiles back to a product that you can make new textiles out of it, and not that you basically downcycle it to something that you can fill your sofa with or something like that. Yeah, so we're really talking about an upcycling or a quality that can be reused for textiles. And to design these kind of products together with customers is really a key area that we want to look at. On the one hand, technically it's quite difficult actually to recycle mixed textiles that are, for example, mixed with cotton or other textiles. But that's one thing. The other view is then, how do you actually create the whole ecosystem? How do you do the collection? How do you do the transportation across borders in Europe? How do you then market it, and etc.? So how do you also work together with a lot of other players? And yeah, that would be, let's say, an example from the second box. And then in the third one, where we look at really new business models for circularity, that's really how can we actually decouple growth from resource consumption? So are there any different business models where it's not about using more volume or even be it bio-based volume, but actually reducing and earning? I mean, as a stock market listed company, we still have to earn money, obviously, but how can we do that more in terms of a value-based approach? For example, by selling a healthy field instead of a crop protection product, going for these performance-based models or service-oriented models as examples. No? So that's basically the program for circularity, and it has to do a lot with sourcing. And then let's say we also look at the topic from a different angle, and that's where in my team I'm also responsible for our so-called Starting Venture program, and that's where we actually encourage our employees to come up with ideas for circular economy, but can also be other sustainability topics that supports the global south in terms of societal or environmental topics. And that's also a very interesting and successful program where we have supported over 20 projects in the last years, looking at how can we source differently, for example, a cosmetic ingredient from Africa by employing particularly women and going above average minimum wage salary, and how can we support and train them in different ways. So really coming from that point of view, okay, let's move as close as possible to a social business as in the UNOS world, but let's try to approach it from that angle. And that's just to give you a couple of insights of what we're working on. Yeah.
That's amazing. That sounds like a lot is happening. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, Talke. And it's incredibly inspiring to hear such a big enterprise take so many different steps in the right direction of going towards, a just transition and a more environmentally conscious future, transitioning away from fossil fuels. So really great to hear both environmental but also social impact being at the core of kind of that transition internally as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. With that, I would love to come back to the social businesses that are joining our panel today. Maybe Daniel, Sulupta, Elena. What do you think makes social businesses uniquely positioned to contribute to a circular and inclusive economy? Maybe Daniel, what are your thoughts on it here?
Yes, when I look at our company, we are a family company. We are a non-profit company. We have the advantage that we don't have any investor who wants to see money. We don't have shareholders who want to see money. We make profit, but this profit must stay in the company. the owners, they are employees from the company. Of course, they get a salary, but as we don't have the pressure to maximize profit, we can 100% focus on solving the problems we see, ecological and social. So, and that gives time, that takes pressure away from us, and that's why we can focus every day improving social and ecological things. So this is the way I think social business should work. Yeah, that's why it works. Of course, also we have to work hard, make profit, make deals, and so on to pay the salaries. But from the beginning, if someone starts a social business, I think there is another mindset regarding or comparing solving the problems the world have compared to maximize profits. Yes.
Yeah. That's an amazing answer, Daniel, and I think that's entirely in line also with the understanding and definition of Professor Yunus, or co-founder at Yunus Environment Hub, of how he defines and sees the benefit in social business of, reinvesting all profits into the business and really having that core focus and clarity on solving the social, and here in your instance also ecological challenges that you're facing, and truly maximizing the impact you're making with your business. So that is I completely agree with that. I don't know, Solipta, Elena, would you have anything else to add here that you see as what makes social business uniquely positioned to contribute to circular and inclusive economies that Daniel did not yet mention?
So, well, just jumping in, on my side, I will say that profitability is necessary. Self-sustaining organizations are crucial, but being profitable, being a private company, don't need to be directly associated with being the bad guys. No, and this is why I think social enterprises, social businesses are so crucial, because they prove that you can have both.
Yeah.
And that you can have a self-sustained company that is generating profitable, that is creating jobs, but at the same time that it can help the environment and can help the local communities. So I will say that we have been having to choose for too long. No, it has been associated, oh, you can have everything. You need to choose between creating social benefit or environmental benefit or economic benefit. And I think this is where like social businesses are so crucial, because they are not making you choose. We are creating an environment, we are creating a system, and we are creating a business model that allows you to have all of them, and to prove that you can have a system that is self-sustained and that helps a whole environment.
Amazing. Yes, completely agree. Maybe Solipta, would you mind adding, like, what do you think an ideal future would look like, where circular procurement is the norm rather than the exception, procurement from social businesses with circularity solutions?
Yeah, I think it would be the ideal future is when the purchase decision is more or less like in strategic investment. And in under every purchase decision, you don't look at short-term cost savings or refining business models, but you look out at long-term value creation, looking at the environment, the planet, and future generation. So if we consider that in our mindset, so it kind of comes at a very systemic level, So an ideal future is where I think social businesses play a central role in the entire supply chain, because they have the capability, and it has been demonstrated at multiple times in multiple places. Like in India itself, there has been a movement of social enterprises who are bridging gaps, who are successfully getting into the corporate supply chain, textile manufacturers, and also trying to become competitive with with quality, with certification, trading, etc. So I think it's a huge potential, and as long as governments, policies, institutions, and finances, they all come together and see social business as relevant and competitive enough to make it into the circular market, I think that could be an ideal time. For example, there are brilliant companies. So there is a company in south of India called Greenworms. Greenworms work with women of low-income communities. They train them as waste entrepreneurs. Public procurement of the waste management services from the green ones are directly taken to the corporate levels and large-scale buyers. And this entire system, this entire business model addresses environmental footprints, has very positive social outcomes, and can change, things at systemic level. So, just giving an example. So, I think it should be ideal when you make it as a norm.
That's amazing. No, great answer and very interesting to hear your thoughts. Maybe on the other side, Talka, what do you think are like the biggest barriers preventing, social businesses from being integrated into corporate supply chains today?
Yeah, I think certainly there are barriers when I think of my own company, probably in terms of size. I mean, sometimes social business are smaller, not always, as we've seen with Daniel here. It can also be quite big ones. But let's say if we're talking about rather the startup world, I think one barrier can be that, as for example, a chemical company, we need very reliable, very stable inflow of material with very clear specifications. And that can sometimes be a challenge. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot start with pilots and then make your way towards more the stable supply. The other thing is, I think what would be helpful there is to really define standards. Particularly, that's, I would say, true for circular economy. When we talk about different, let's take recyclate qualities, and there sometimes, especially when we go into new markets, it's not even defined what a recyclate standard would be. So I think there, if industry collaboration or different industry players can set up those standards together, that would actually be quite helpful to actually know and be able to define what we're looking for. Because as big companies, you often work with specifications for sourcing, and the clearer something can be defined, the easier it is also to source. And I think the other, on a very different note, a barrier is, of course, just a mindset. No? I mean, we have maybe a certain image of social businesses, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. And I think there we can also work quite a lot on by showing good examples, by making success cases clearer and available for others. So that would be, I think, two angles to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel, do you agree that a mindset change is needed and that success examples help showcase the potential of social businesses? What's been your experience, maybe from like the supplier side, in overcoming these challenges when procuring goods or providing goods to procurers?
Yes, at the moment we are partnering with about 1,800 companies in Europe, and so when we make contracts, we don't make them with ecological or sustainability managers. We always have the barrier of the purchasing department. So we gained many experience in the last 20 years, and that it's really a hard job to bring together the spirit of a social company with a traditional purchasing department. One problem we see is that, for example, bigger companies, they have their strategies. For example, they have a worldwide one supplier strategy, for example. But I don't know any social business who works or who can deliver goods or services through the whole world. So I think there's a problem of fitting these two worlds together. And another problem is, of course, that there are two few goals in purchasing departments in the case of social and ecological goals. Often is to maximize, to have the best, or to have the less spending, but not so much ecological and social goals. Often there is a lack of knowledge what social enterprises can do, how they act, so that we have to talk more. But on regarding the social enterprises, there's also often a lack of knowledge how they have to deliver services, how buyers act, and what is important for them. And also, I think a problem of social enterprises is that they are not often challenging themselves with competitors to them, which are traditional companies. So that's our experience in the last 20 years.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think especially that last point of, not just comparing towards other social businesses, but other businesses in general, and seeing how to play the competitiveness field there is really important, to focus on being competitive and ensuring you have the best product or service out there as well. So very interesting points. Thank you, Daniel. I don't know, Elena, do you have any additional barriers you'd like to add that you faced, especially from being like a startup, maybe when trying to approach buyers or procurers for your products?
Yeah, so I would say it's specifically regarding trust and how to gain a trust of the people you are pitching or showcasing your solution. And specifically in our case comes from lack of legal frameworks. No, we are using a new model from a new problem in a region that innovation, specifically in the blue technology sector, is something pretty new. No, so of course it's a lot of misinformation, a lot of fear regarding how, what you say, truthful is your solution, how we can keep it on the timeline. And I would say also the lack of certifications and again legal frameworks or supporters is something really difficult, because even we have an established supply chain, even we have products on the market, many times not having access to certifications or to any type of way to prove that what we do is validated, makes us less appealing for the market. And for example, we have started working a lot into that. For some of our products, we have get organic certifications, and we have been working with the government to try to co-develop different licenses. But of course, it has been a long work, and being a startup, being and yet developing company, having to self-funding ourselves, many times makes our work harder, and that things take longer than it should be, and that of course restrains a lot our growing capacity. So I will say that's one of the main deals. But at the end of the day, there are also now arising new things that we are aiming to take advantage of, and specifically, for example, blockchain development regarding our product traceability. Also, for example, carbon credit certifications that luckily some new standards like the gold standard ones is now starting to take into account sargassum. But at the end of the day, we need a lot of support regarding this. It's a long journey, it's a long way, and our solution is already there, but the lack of support many times restrain what I say this grow. And also the lack of showcasing some side benefits, because for example, as I mentioned, we have an organic certification because it's something you can get. It's something that's well known on the market, and that helps the customer to understand the sustainability, or at least, well, this the organic part of the product. But for example, regarding the social benefit we are creating, there is no way to showcase that to the public. No, there is not a social certification per se, or a local community employment reward regarding that, and that will be, for example, be amazing, so the consumers or the other business can understand the truly broader impact some of the solution have, that they are not only direct benefiting the environment, but they are also benefiting the society. And this, I think, it's something that will truly impact and benefit and help us overcome all of these side quests that we have been dealing with.
Yeah, very important points. And I love also that you spoke to the certifications that are required and that these can be very hard to access. I think those are concerns that we've also at Unis Environment have heard a lot of the different social businesses that we've supported, that these are challenges of being integrated into supply chains. So yeah, that's very much in line with kind of the trends that we're seeing across the globe and the feedback we're hearing from social businesses. Maybe question to the audience. You can drop in the chat as well. Has anyone here participated in circular procurement? Would love to hear if you have, and if so, what your experience has been. We'll continue with the panel, but would love to see your responses. Feel free to drop them in the chat. And at the end, we'll also try to come to the questions that I see being posted. So yes, very curious to see if anyone here has experience in circular procurement. And if not, if you're interested now, then we're obviously also very interested to hear that. Maybe to go from kind of the challenges that we've outlined in circular procurement now, hearing both from like the corporate side as well from social business side, my question would be, what needs to change in the procurement ecosystem, in your opinion, to enable more circular impact procurement? I don't know, Solipta, if you have any thoughts on what you think needs to change that you'd be willing to share?
Well, a lot of changes are required when we talk about scale, because a lot of the businesses, and as we also heard from Elena, a lot of small businesses face the challenge of scale, the volume, the tight timelines, the big companies and the corporates have. So we need a systemic level change, and that would come from equal participation from all the stakeholders. For example, the policyholders, they play a key role here. How can they facilitate a platform-based solution that can bridge, that can help in the, capacity building? For example, I think we are part of a coalition called India Social Procurement Coalition, which basically brings together buyers side, corporate institutional procurers, corporate buyers, big large companies, and also bring in the other ecosystem enablers like capacity builders, trainers, uh, that kind of through facilitating different kind of workshops, capacity building programs, networking opportunities. So I think uh, the coalition and the collaboration model kind of changes are also required, because these kind of platforms has actually demonstrated networking, fostered knowledge sharing, understand the key gaps in the ecosystem, and where any of the stakeholders can pitch in to solve those, say, initial barriers, preparedness gap, go-to-market strategy, certification, attaching certification. So I think at an ecosystem level, most all the stakeholders are equally responsible for making changes in their capacity. So we talk about policymakers, we talk about equally finance. Finance is a big role to play. So really looking at various kind of blending financing approaches that can be brought onto the table, various kind of mechanisms, CSRs, ESG, kind of link it with the bigger corporate goals or ESG goals or EU CSRD mandates, and bridging those gaps would be a level changer.
Daniel, I see that you unmuted yourself. Would you want to add anything to that?
No, I'm absolutely with Solipta. Perhaps add one thing. I think it's important that companies not only make their standard tenders like they've ever did it, they have to get in contact with the social business companies in which context ever. They have to get to know each other, and they have to develop something together, to start very small, perhaps only in one town or only in one facility, learn together, grow together, but don't make tenders for the whole world where with a big volume where no social business has any chance to win this tender. That's one of my most important experience.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I think what internally can also definitely help to increase the sourcing of circular materials is really to set targets. So, I mean, we set ourselves a target to have a certain amount of circular sales, which is also defined by how much circular input material, how much circular raw material you use, and that of course then triggers through the whole organization and also influences then the procurement department to say, okay, look, if we can fulfill here the demands of the business units who have that target, then let's also look at that. But that's only one lever. I think another lever would also be to have really standards to calculate, for example, carbon footprints in the same way, so that it's really fair for everybody, because often I think social circular companies really have advantages in a lower carbon footprint. So that is one of the benefits I think that can be brought into the game on top of, let's say, the story and all of that, but really addressing those hardcore facts that we can then also pass on to our customers, like a lower carbon footprint is very important, I think. And for that, we need very clear standards of how to calculate it. And then also social circular startups can actually make use of that. And that was actually a thought I wanted to address and take up Daniel's comment earlier. I quite agree that you don't necessarily go in for that story, but really compete in the regular business, let's say, environment. And there things in terms of sustainability count, such as the carbon footprint. So I think to have that ready and to have that proven, and I think Elena also mentioned that, yeah, have it certified. First of all, you need to have the standard, so it's clear how to calculate, and then at best to have it somehow certified so that you can prove it and that we can then pass it on in our whole value chain from procurement, then also to our customers, and pass on a product with a lower carbon footprint as example, yeah, to our customers. That's quite helpful because then it really enters the regular processes in the company. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. No, Telka, thanks you for shedding that perspective as well. And I'd like at this moment to actually address a question in the chat as well, because I think it fits very good to our conversation, which is, what are your thoughts on digital product passports to secure circular procurement? So to briefly define, a digital product passport is a standardized digital record that contains key information about like a product's materials, origin, repairability, environmental impact, and end-of-life operations. And really the aim of it is to improve transparency across the value chain, helping consumers and procurers obviously make informed decisions that support your circular economy goals. I don't know if any one of you would like to take this question and shed your thoughts on it.
I can take that. Very interesting point, and it kind of links with what Aki also mentioned. I think the digital solutions can help in the traceability in the supply chain, in the big corporate. So there is a very big question always about traceability and where it is coming from, the credibility. So a digital passport could definitely help in enhancing the traceability. But at the same time, how do you make it accessible to the social businesses? Are they aware about it, or how do you make that accessible at the social business level? So not sure about global north, but in global south there is a huge challenge of accessibility and technology integration, and there are solutions that is coming up, but the challenge of scaling, how do you make it accessible for them? Although it is a brilliant solution, tech-based integration, which can seamlessly solve a lot of complex challenges at the circular procurement level. But at the same time, um, uh, the small businesses, they kind of require simple guidelines, they often require simple solutions that can help them identify, that can help them seen, and also, make them go market ready.
Yeah, very, very interesting points. Appreciate you answering that and providing your perspective. In light of the timing, we'll move on. We've heard kind of about the challenges in circular procurement, but also about what needs to change at a systemic level to ensure circular procurement is more successful and adopted at scale. I'd like to now go to a more success story. Maybe Daniel, could you share anything, an example of a successful procurement partnership? And what made it work? What made you, achieve or convince maybe a procurer who initially wasn't to be convinced that you were the best business fit for the job, for lack of other words. And I think it may come back to your answer that you already had previously of, just competing with the other non-social businesses out there and having the best product and service available. But maybe it's something else too. I'm very curious to hear if you have an example that you could share.
Yes, we have we have many long-term procurement relationship with small companies, with big companies. Next week I'm in Berlin on the Green Tech Festival and have a talk with the CIO of the Schaeffler Group. We are now partnering since more than 70 years, for more than 70 years now. What is important? I think the most important thing is that you don't act and don't give the partner the feeling that you are a CSR project. You have to be competitive and you have to deliver a great service. So that's so important. From the first day on, if you look on the refurbishment market in Europe or in the world, it's a very hard market. Thousands of companies are fighting to get no longer needed notebooks of BASF, of Siemens, of Telecom, and so on. And so from day one, we said, okay, we are a little bit more sustainable perhaps than the others, but we want to be the best in security, in process, in innovation, which is very important, so that you also look at these important aspects. For example, with software engineers, we make a lot of data exchange with APIs and so on to be the first mover in the market, even as a social business. What's also very important is, I think, KPIs. Companies, our partners, they love KPIs. If you can share KPIs regarding saving CO2 emissions, water consumption, energy, raw materials, based on a really good study, they can use it for their CSRD reporting, for their internal, external communication, and so on. That's really an added value to build up a marketing story with the partner, and also not only be connected with one department, for example, the CSR department, sustainability, to be not connected in our case with the C-level, with the IT, with the purchasing, with the inclusion officers, so that at the best way they will never give up this partnership, because there are so many people who like this partnership. That's what we learned, what is very basic for a long-term partnership.
Amazing. Elena, do you maybe want to add one sentence of a success story for yourself to that as well? I know we're coming up to the end of the time, but I don't know if you want to share anything from your end still. Maybe a success.
One brief thing is that we usually try to measure success in which huge company we get to convince now, or which huge organization we are supplying. But success, it's also on the local part. And for example, in our case, it's the farmers, for example, that are already using our products, the farmers that are benefiting from the sustainable biostimulants we provide, that are being able to reduce synthetic fertilizers. In Spain, we say like every small sand grain it's important, no? And that to build a sand castle, you need all of them. So I will say that many times we need to understand that every small step we do, every small support we get, it's a successful story. And one day we may achieve these big companies, and it's super important too. But local matters, regional matters, and succeed is also the customer you are able to reach. Succeed is also not only the ones that implement your solution or use your solution, but understand the meaning behind that, have access to the knowledge and the capability to judge by themselves. And this coming back to how important is this, for example, digital tools and what Sulipta said, that for them being accessible to the people, because that it's also what success means for us. People having the capacity to choose and to make choices based on knowledge and accessible knowledge for everybody to be able to understand the impact just one person can make on the ecosystem.
Amazing. Thank you. We're unfortunately coming to the end of the session, though I feel like we're only just getting started. It shows that this is a really, really important and relevant topic with a lot of discussion required. And with that, I want to ask you all for one final sentence. If you could summarize, what is the one mindset shift that you believe must happen in order to truly make circular impact procurement the standard? Yeah, Daniel, if you want to start, feel free.
In one sentence, okay. I think companies should prioritize ecological and social goals over profit maximization. Point.
Amazing. Amazing. I completely agree. I think that is a very, very good and very clear sentence and statement and call for action. I don't know who wants to go next. Talka?
I can go next.
I can
focusing
go
on the circular economy part. Sorry, Elena. Yeah, I'll make it really quick. I would say the mindset shift. Think about a value circle instead of a value chain. We often talk about value chain engagement, but if you just have that graphic in mind and you think about a value circle instead of a value chain, that might be at least the beginning for something to change in terms of moving towards more circularity.
Awesome. Elena?
Yeah, I would say the same thing, which the concept I started, and is that sustainability and circularity don't mean sacrifice. I think it's the main thing we need to forget about, and and this sentence that we are usually associating, that circularity means that you need to sacrifice something, sacrifice profit or sacrifice size or sacrifice growing. That's not true. There are already models that prove that instead of being a sacrifice, is a benefit. And we need this mind shift of forgetting the direct association of circularity and sustainability with sacrifice.
I agree. Amazing. And Sulipta, do you have anything to add to those already very clear statements of what's needed?
I think the theme here should be mindset, because it's coming very strongly and all of us are very resonating to a common need at, say, fundamental level. The mindset needs to be changed first. But to top it up, I also see collaboration is a key. You know, alone we could just go for so far, but together we can go a long way. And when you're talking about a circular procurement, just transition and impact, resilience, I think collaboration is the key.
I think so many important points were added here in the last round of one-sentence answers. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for such a great and very rich discussion. I think we covered a lot of ground, highlighting from the vision to the on-the-ground solutions, from the challenges to what's needed. So thank you so much to highlighting the importance of circular procurement and the potential that lies within it. I really appreciate you highlighting that today, and it seems like we're only just getting started. So with that, I just want to briefly summarize and highlight as well that in Germany, we have an initiative at UNIS Environment Hub where we're supporting circular social businesses become procurement ready and be procured by both public and private companies. So if you're interested in getting involved, please check out our initiative in Germany. It's supported by the BMWK, which is the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action in the European Fund. It'll run for the next 3 years, aimed at consulting, coaching, matchmaking you with the relevant parties so that you can be procured as your goods if you're a circular social business, or if you're on the procuring side, if you want to procure goods and services from a circular social business, that you can find the right match. So please check it out. And if you have any questions, reach out to our team. You can also find more information on our website, and you can scan everything here to get the latest insights and updates. And with that, I really just want to say a huge thank you. Thank you, Talka. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Sulipta, for all your contributions and your input today. We really genuinely appreciate you being here. And also thank you to my amazing colleague, Julia, for sharing the insights of the report that you wrote together with the Bertelsmann Foundation in the potential and the importance of circular social business in a systemic and just transition. So thank you everyone for being here today. And I wish you all the best, and yeah, a good rest of the week with the World Circular Economy Forum sessions. There's still a few happening. So enjoy the other sessions if you have the opportunity. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
It's been really a pleasure.
Thank you to everybody. Thanks, Chiara. You did a great job.
Thank you. Oh,
Yes,
thank you,
absolutely.
Daniel.
Shout out to you and the team for a brilliant panel.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the change and difference and impact globally you're making. Really, really impressive and inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Thank you so
You
much.
too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.